Welcome back to Behind the Mic. In this episode, Jim sits down with Mark Irving of Irving Equipment to discuss the legacy, growth, and future of their family business. Mark shares heartwarming memories of his early days in the industry, lessons learned from his father, and the importance of service and certification in crane operation. Don't miss this insightful conversation highlighting decades of dedication and foresight in the concrete foundations industry. Here's your host, Jim Beatty.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Behind the Mic, the podcast for the Concrete Foundations Association. I'm James Beatty. I'm the executive director of the association, and we're here on set live at CFA Con 25, Deadwood, South Dakota. This is the 50th anniversary of the association, and this stretch of the podcast has been featuring some of the legacy, some of the origins of the association, but also the current energy behind the association. And I'm really pleased to bring to the podcast today a conversation with Mark Irving of Irving Equipment. Mark, welcome to Behind the Mic.
Thanks, Jim. Pleasure to be here.
So
very
good.
Exciting. 50 years.
50 years. Can you believe that?
So how many of those 50 years have you been here?
I have been 25.
25.
25 of those years.
I started the same year you did.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about that earlier. It's interesting. Our sons were talking last night when their first ones they can remember.
Yeah.
Lane's was in Stowe or the Dells.
I think it was the Dells is what he remembered, though, because it was the sand, right? Everybody remembers the sand. We had this huge parking lot, all the equipment. You guys were participating
Conveyor
in that.
belt with
and the
sand and prizes, yeah.
And the kids digging through with their hands to find the prizes. We still have one of those trucks, the Trevor, our oldest, who's now 28, I think.
But you know what you don't have? The mustache.
I don't have the mustache.
Oh, did I say that out loud?
I've lost
I'm so
the mustache.
sorry.
My daughter calls it the caterpillar. Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, there's such great memories. My first recollection of Irving Equipment is you guys leading the charge about the importance of the transition. You were pumps back then.
Yep.
And your dad was really empowering the equipment industry to invest in the association. I so remember his championing of that energy. What do you remember about your dad leading you into this industry?
Well, so I've done this since I was that tall.
Way tall.
Mom and Dad started a business. You know, Dad did cranes right out of high school. That's been a few years ago. But So growing up, we all did this. We used to ride our bikes into the shop, sweep the floors, mow the grass, things like that. My brother said they'd pay us with ice cream, things like that. It's probably not against the law.
No.
But things like that.
Good
but
with that.
We used to, when I was there sweeping the floors, you'd sweep up around the welders, things like that, and you'd say, hey, what are you doing there? And hey, guy would say, hey, let me show you a couple things. So, you'd pick up, there's always a bucket of steel, scrap steel underneath there. You'd pick it up, and I'd do what we call modern art. You start welding things together. And after a while, Dad would come out and say, I do this, after I'd done sweeping or something like this. No, that's not the right way to do it. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it right. So I had to learn with a stick before you could learn with a wire. We're not allowed to use a chipping hammer. So you had to weld it with a stick, and the slag had to just peel up like that, not chip, 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 chip. If it didn't just tink off like that, that means your weld was bad.
Okay.
And you weren't allowed to do that. And of course, once I mastered that, then I could do it with the wire. Anybody could weld with the wire.
Well, not anybody, because I can't, but go ahead.
So we did things like that. Maybe it was around the machinists or something like that. So we would come up there after hours, and once we got older in high school, we'd build car parts, things like that. We just did it all. We used to paint cars up there. But I did the service end of it right out of high school, repairing cranes, working on new cranes. Then went into the engineering part of it with AutoCAD. So it's funny because now that's what my son does. He's big on the CAD part of it. Of course, he's laying out some of the trucks, the wheelbases, the beds, and he talks to some of his customers on his own. Like a couple weeks ago, he just took a new unit out to one of the other CFA members, and so that was a pretty cool full circle. Him and I stopped at one of the legacy members and did a demo on the way out in Illinois, and then I went back home, and he kept going out to Kansas and Kansas, Oklahoma, and then flew back. So that was really, really cool.
As you look back, and you said it, you and Steve started by sweeping in your plants for your dad. What is your dad and his pioneering for your company? What does that mean to you today?
it's the knowledge is unbelievable. We're trying to lose that. We've been working on a couple of projects now with some in the precast concrete industry there for like septic tanks, big pipes, stuff like that. So a couple of projects he was working on. My father was working with my son directly on that, and I was kind of stepped back and watching those two work together. His old knowledge, his new knowledge, the ideas, and they're drawing this thing up in 3D. I'm looking at things like that and go, wow, the knowledge in that legacy is unbelievable. You know, it's one thing the technical skills, but the people skills, you know. I was just over there talking with one of the other legacy members, Brian.
Yep.
And because I cornered him, we were talking about a couple of things. He brought stuff back up from 30 years ago, or 25 anyways, or something like that. But the knowledge that Dad brings is unbelievable. And, you know, it's nice to see it passed down to what some of these guys are 4 generations now. I didn't believe that. I mean, we're 3, probably working on 4.
Right.
But that's unbelievable, you know.
Yeah, when you stop and think about 75 years of being in one industry, and they always say that the transition from the first to the second generation goes pretty smoothly, but the second to the third generation, major hiccups.
You're right? Because they don't know how we started, why we started,
the
how
vision,
did we get from A to B.
Yeah.
And, you know, I appreciate some of the meetings that you have, seminars on legacy, on transitions and things like that. You know, hey, do it like this, don't do that. I remember a couple years ago, they had some very pointed conversations on some of the ways this worked well for our company, this didn't work well because we had more kids, less kids. People got along, they didn't get along. So I really appreciate some of those seminars that I've heard over the years. You know,
yeah, it's
still
really
very relevant.
They stick with you. Another thing that when I stop and I think about Irving Equipment, I think about your dad, I think about what I've observed from you and what I already see in Lane. A word that it just is front and center is service. And what is intriguing to me about the idea of service, and I want you to speak to that here in just a minute, is because the contractors that I know, the CFA Concrete pros that are members here, like service is what really leads them in their market.
Absolutely.
Tell me what service means to you.
Friday night last week or 2 weeks ago, we had a guy call. It's a guy we've been quoting a crane to. He hadn't bought a new crane from us or a used crane, but he called me up. It was like 4:30 or quitting at 5 or something like that. Hey, my crane's down. I talked to him with my limited knowledge. And again, he hadn't bought anything from us. Just one of my contacts, a possible lead. So talked to him for a little bit. It went over my head. Hey, let's talk to Steve. It sounds like this is the deal right here. Hey, let's go out and let's look at a crane. So we get on the phone. We're emailing or texting pictures back and forth, things like that. We didn't have the right phones to do a video call real quick. But so we're looking at stuff like that. Oh, hey, here's your problem right here. Do you have that part? I don't know because your crane is 15 years old. It's brand X. We don't. We got on Facebook Marketplace. I said, this is what you need right here. You need a radio handset here. I found 3 of them in my location. We don't have it. But you can call these guys and buy it, or you should be able to find something locally out in the Northeast. Steve didn't know the guy.
Right.
Hopefully we sow those seeds. We sell our service. You know, we're selling Ford. This guy had a Chevy. But so when he's ready, he'll call us.
Yeah.
Hey, wow, these guys are swell guys. You know, I've never spent a dime with them, but they took time to show me what I need, and they even showed me where to get it. And, you know, they took an hour out of their time on a Friday night. And to me, service is things like that. You sow the seeds. Hopefully it'll come back. Some will, some won't. But law averages, it will. And I always say, tell your friends and neighbors.
Yeah.
If we had a good experience, tell your friends and neighbors. If you had a bad experience, tell me right now so we can take care of that. You know, that's service to me.
And it's so unique in our world today that someone is willing to put forth the effort, and to build a relationship and not to expect any contribution, right? Not to earn anything from that. It's just it's the baby boomer generation resurging again.
Oh yeah, and that's what we were taught, you know, and hopefully it was instilled on me, be instilled on Lane and some of those other guys coming in here. We don't see that a lot, you know. It's what have you done for me lately? What can you do for me now? No, it costs money to do all this stuff, but it'll come around. It'll full circle, it'll come around.
Yeah, absolutely will. You see Lane already taking off in business, you know, almost like he was primed to be part of it, but he's That's that second to third generation that is a difficult change. What are you most surprised about as you look at this next generation beginning to show the signs of leadership and eventual ownership?
The excitement level, the passion. That's always something you have to have no matter what you do. Pouring, running equipment, driving, you have to have a passion for whatever it is, like your job. Obviously, you have a passion for what you do, but each generation has to have a passion. Doesn't matter what you get paid.
Right.
We all do this because we want to get paid to do something, but you also have to have fun, and it's got to be exciting for it. But I see the passion in, some of the people that he's involved with now in some of the emerging leader groups and things like that, and they've kind of formed their own clique of people in that generation, It was interesting there. The Economist was talking about some of the generations coming up here, and I'm thinking about some of that stuff going, okay, yep, you need to talk about that a little bit more. But it's the excitement level. It's a job, but it's got to be, it's hard work, no matter what your occupation is, but it also has to be kind of fun and rewarding,
Yeah, and I would say, you probably agree with me, if the hard work is not there, the fun isn't there.
That's right.
Something that you don't have to put energy forward. It's hard to connect with it. It's hard to be ingrained in the attraction to it.
If it's easy, everybody's going to do it, and it's not that fun. The reward is not there. If the passion's not there, the reward is not there. Whatever it is you're doing,
Yeah. You guys made a big transition. What has it been? 10 years ago, to transition from concrete pump industry and this measure of service that you just talked about. Completely embedded and committed to concrete pumps, and now you're in truck cranes, articulating cranes. Again, right? That's right, because that's where your dad started. What precipitated that change, and how glad are you to be back at this core of articulating equipment?
So we started doing pumps, and then it opened up again to where we were allowed to do knuckle booms, so we started doing that. Yep. So we'd grown our business on the pump side up from just selling in a certain geographical area to I want to say the third largest pump dealer in North America, not owned by a major by the manufacturer. So we were, not owned by Ford or Chevy or something like that. So we were third behind number one and number two. So I thought that was pretty cool. So whatever it is we put our sights in, we're going to grow it. We're going to take care of it because of parts, because of service, things like that. So then we could get back into cranes again. We started doing that, doing cranes, doing pumps. In the poured wall industry, it's natural because if you're pouring walls, you have cranes to set your forms, you have pumps to fill the forms, things like that. So it was easy. But I don't know, competition from the Asian markets, China, Korea. Some of them make some good pumps, and some of them were not so good. And I tell people, if a new wall guy comes into your area with no reputation, what's he got? He's got a sharp pencil. That's it. Yeah. So we saw the writing on the wall and said, they're just going to race to see who can be the cheapest. Yeah. And so we were having a lot of fun doing it, but that's a 24-hour business. So if you're pumping concrete in California, Nova Scotia, something like that, you're doing a 9 p.m. bridge project or a 6 a.m. project or something like that, it was taking a lot out of everybody. The rewards weren't as much. And so we made a conscious family decision, said, let's phase out of the pumps and get into cranes. Yeah. And in the cranes, you can use them for precast concrete, poured walls, roof trusses, monuments, grave site, things like that. So the market was a lot more diverse because there's more cranes in any given area than there are concrete pumps. So and it's not necessarily a 24-hour a day business, so that made sense. And through service and making the cranes simple, like we were talking to a guy earlier today, a lot of the cranes are too complicated. You have to have the manufacturer software to work on the crane. A lot of people don't realize that, the new cranes. So it's like a John Deere tractor. You have to have John Deere software to plug in. So some areas, they have some legislation out there for the right to work on your tractor, right to work on your equipment. Mm-hmm. Soon enough, the cranes are going to be the same way. Ours don't have any computer on it. We can order it with a computer, but generally they don't have that. So anybody can work on it if you have a basic knowledge of hydraulics, maybe a pressure gauge or something like that. You can work on it. So that's some of the things that's made our sales, just go up exponentially.
Yeah. So you kind of walked around it just a little bit there, and let's a little bit of a turn. And talk about another thing that's near and dear to you and I, and where we have connected and collaborated quite a bit on, and that's crane certification, crane operator certification, which is a big deal. OSHA made the decision to set aside the exception for the residential construction industry that those working in holes, those working in excavations, did not need to have a certified crane operator. That no longer exists, and you've got to get your operator certified. We're seeing a sluggish entry or sluggish response to that, but you've been leading the way. You've brought certification to your customers across your diverse landscape.
We strongly support it, and we think it needs to be there.
Yeah.
And if it's going to happen, we might as well provide a vehicle for it. So even though I've trained hundreds, if not thousands, of people how to run a crane,
right,
we don't lead the class. We bring a third-party person in there. We use our facility. We say, okay, you're going to need this, so why don't we provide the classroom, the training area, the obstacle course area, things like that. So we bring a third party in there to do that. Mm-hmm. It just makes more sense. That way we're not taking our guys off, because it's a government-tracked, like your driver's license.
Right.
So, when this guy comes in here to do this, we have people coming from all over the country. We'll set up a negotiated rate on hotel rooms and restaurants and things like that for the day or two that they're in there, things like that. But I really think everybody should get it, even if your industry didn't exactly require it. Before, it was kind of a gray area. Does a wall contractor need it? Do they not need it? A lot of guys were just doing it because if something's out there, say a guy has an accident. Mm-hmm. Was your guy trained in every way that he could be? Well, no, he could have had this. So if you're a forward-thinking, one of the pioneers, you're going to say, wow, if my guy can have this more training, I'm going to do it. It's something else he can put in his file cabinet for insurance reasons, peace of mind, things like that. At the end of the day, everybody wants to go home. So that's kind of the stance we've taken on it. And that way it's awareness. If there is any questions, hey, let's go over some things, maybe you need a little freshening up on.
Yeah.
I had, after a couple of years, I had to take the course.
Yeah.
I'll admit, for a while there, I didn't have my card. I have my card now.
Yeah.
So I took it now, and I passed. And so it's nice to have. And I learned a couple of things.
I was just going to ask that. So as you go through the process
That's
and
right.
you advocate for it, you also learn and
right.
advance your own knowledge.
That's right.
It makes you closer to the customer.
That's right. And I see the things that they're going through with this industry. And, so it's not just Ford walls, it's people do roof trusses and
Sure.
different things like that. So I get to see some of the things that they're up against. Well, it looks great in the book, but in real practice, that it doesn't work like that. But I understand, okay.
Yeah.
But I'm 100% for it. Unfortunately, it does stick with the operator. So if the operator leaves, he can take it, but that's up to the individual. You got to, make him want to stay there, and but it's tied to the person, just like a driver's license.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up too, because for years I've heard concrete contractors talk about the resistance to training, education, and advancing their employees for the reason, well, what if they leave and take that to their customer,
but if I
their
train
competitor,
them,
right?
They're going to want to stay.
Exactly. You invest in them.
Yep, that's right.
It proves that you're interested in
I'm
the
not
value.
scared you leave.
Right.
I'm going to give you all the knowledge that
Right.
you need to stay here.
And then the other side of that coin, you flip that coin over and you say, okay, well, what if you don't invest in them and they stay anyway?
Yeah, right. That means that then
Now they're higher risk.
Right, and nobody wants that.
Yeah, so the crane, I've sat down with the director of construction, OSHA director of construction, and had that hard conversation of interpreting the crane regulation, had their crane specialist, had their knuckle boom and articulating crane specialist, digging into the language, and there is no exception. They cannot find, and they're not going to open up that crane regulation anytime soon. What's your message to the concrete contractor about certification and advancing that commitment to do the right thing?
Safety has no quitting time. They should do that.
Safety has no quitting time.
We use that kind of, it's a saying we have in the shop there, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Something happens. Hey, what went wrong here? Did you quit?
Yeah.
Safety doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So it's things like that. It's awareness, the load charts. It's something as simple as why we use outrigger pads.
Right.
They touch a little bit on the math behind that, not to get, down that rabbit hole, but why do you put pads down? Because it's not always on rock ledge or something like that, hard clay, sand, the 1-to-1 rule. Because putting forms into a hole. So if it's 10 feet down, it need to be 10 feet back. Guys don't know that. It's not a 2-to-1. It's a 1-to-1 roll. But things like that, just driving that issue home there. Oh, I didn't know why we sat back. Guys just say, yeah, we should set back. No, this is why we set back.
Yeah.
This is why we have bigger pads, things like that. But training.
Yeah. All right, last question for you. Mark's crystal ball. You've got a lot of years behind you in the industry. You've got, you're handing this over. You're raising up your son to take eventual ownership. You're going to be still engaged for quite a few years. You've seen a lot of technical transition in this industry. What does the crystal ball show you about the future of what you're doing and the concrete construction industry?
We're always going to need cranes to move things around. They get it more mechanized, more automated, let's say robotic, something like. You're always going to need people in the field. You need hands, bodies. We're going to need simple machines like that to move pieces around. I understand we're selling hammers. It's a hammer to build that wall, to build that house. Expensive hammers.
It's expensive.
But they're still just hammers.
Right.
You're still going to need things like that. Right now in the shop we're building a 95-footer. We're building a 35-footer. So some are small hammers, some are big hammers.
Right.
We're always going to need hammers, period.
Yeah. So the industry is going to evolve. The industry is going to change. There's going to be technology, but it's still going to remain a human, connected, service-based, quality-minded industry.
To get it from that blueprint to the finished product, how do we get from A to B? It's going to be very similar to what we're doing now for a long time.
Yeah.
I truly, truly believe that. There'll be some streamlining here and there. We see some other technologies coming out there, but if they do materialize, it'll be a long way.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for your participation. You've been a thought leader. You've been an example to many. You've been a longtime sponsor and supporter, starting with your dad and your mom. Precious memories of interaction with them. Same with you and Dawn, and now with Lane and Mariah. I love your family. I love what you've brought to the association. Thank you for taking some time with us.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me on today. It was really enjoyable.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to all that lays out in front of you and the next 50 years of the CFA that you'll participate in.
That'll be interesting to see where this all goes. I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. Well, that'll do it for this podcast. Again, we are here live on location, CFA Con 25, Deadwood, South Dakota. We're starting to wrap up as this is our third and final day. Still some one-on-one networking taking place. I need to get Mark back to his booth so he can connect with one or two more customers. In the meantime, I hope that you continue to listen. Find out all of our podcasts here on our YouTube channel and look forward to more content from Behind the Mic, the Concrete Foundations Association. Have a good day.
Behind the Mic is brought to you by the Concrete Foundations Association. You can learn more about us and about becoming one of our #CFA Concrete Pros by visiting our website, cfaconcretepros.org. If you're a concrete professional interested in being part of a future podcast, reach out to us by email to info@cfaconcretepros.org to start a conversation. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Mic.